Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host Bryan. We're going to wrap up this week with a creator request, which is where a smaller artist gets in contact with me and asks me to check out their works. Today we're actually having somebody who's been on the channel before. I got an email. Hey Bryan, I hope you've been well. I'm Jacob, aka Nadae. Just this last November, you reviewed my single, The Fighter, and we had a good chat in the video comments, which I much appreciated. As promised, I am sending you my new single, The Lover. This video will premiere on Slipknot's Knotfest 500,000 followers on February 14th, which was earlier this week. Should you wish to review The Lover, here's the YouTube link. All the best, Jacob. So, let's dive into this. I enjoyed The Fighter. I thought it was a really interesting idea musically that brought in some of the themes of combat into the music itself. So we're going to see the opposite side of that. If we now know who the fighter is, let's discover who the lover is. Yeah, I dig that. It still has the grip from the guitar, but the bright poppiness that our intro gave us in the piano. Very cool. Okay, I can get behind this. I love how it's so aggressive, but it's so light. It has so good. Where are we going with this bridge? Oh, wasn't expecting this at all. Really interesting decision on this. Oh. Oh, okay. Such a catchy chorus. Interesting. Piano drums, then piano guitar. Okay. Okay. This is real fun. I think I've got a real cohesive idea of what's going on here already, which is neat. 'Cause usually I got to talk myself through this stuff, kind of meander my way through an analysis until I land on, a very cohesive thought that brings everything together. But I know that. I know that point. I'm going to be building towards it. This is going to be great. Um, so the song is comprised of a metal band lacking a bass, I think. Did anybody else hear a bass? I certainly heard guitar, drums, two vocals, and the piano. That's what I certainly heard. Um, and the drums, well, let me put it this way. There's a divide in here, right? Um, we introduce with the piano and the female vocals. That is our introduction to the track. We layer in the guitars underneath that with the drums and bring this genty vibe underneath our intro as we repeat it, which I thought was a really neat idea. You get the aggression of the metal because, as far as I know, this is a metal project, and you also get the beauty of the cleaner instruments. However, we moved from this into our verse, I think, which was all aggression. The piano was gone, the female vocals were gone, they were replaced with a male growl. And I was like, okay, now, we're getting into the energy here. Um, where are we going to go with this? And I was pleasantly surprised to find that we were not going to go very far with the aggression as a whole. Every single verse is 2 bars of just the guitar and male vocals with the drums, and then 2 bars of the male vocals and guitar and the clean female vocals and the piano. And then we get 2 of the aggressive and then 2 of the combined. And that is every single verse we have. Which I thought was really interesting. When you look at our intro and our verse 1 in a microcosm, you get uh the female, the clean side, you get a mixture of the clean and the gritty, then you get just the gritty, and then you get a mixture of them again with both vocalists this time. And it's just really nice seeing the divide, the each instrument within its own element, isolated, and seeing how they come together. And then of course the chorus from here on out is our intro with a second set of vocals. There's a back and forth on our 2 vocalists. So up until the bridge, we have our intro, verse, chorus, verse, chorus. It's all about this idea of 2 becoming 1, right? And this is just a really beautiful concept. And we're going to dig a little more into this when we hit the lyrics, because I love the way these things come together. Now, after we get out of the bridge, we do a third verse, we do a third chorus, and we do an outro, which is a repetition of the chorus with variations. These variations are interesting in that the first variation, we removed the guitar. So we had the drums and the piano underneath our 2 vocalists. Then we swapped out the drums and put in the guitar. So we have the guitar and the piano and our 2 vocalists. Um, interesting idea of just removing instruments from your chorus to make your outro. Um, But that pretty much wraps that up. Like my idea here is two becoming one, and I think that fits in with all of our A and B sections. What threw me for a loop is our C, our bridge. It gets dark, and I guess I do need to touch real quick that the emotional resonance of our A and B is positivity. The guitar riff is rather metally, rule of cool, genty abrasiveness, but it's always kind of lacking by itself. Yeah, I guess we'll talk about the bridge in a second. I have a couple of thoughts here. It's lacking by itself. It is a cool riff, but it needs something above it. Even when you put the male vocals next to it, it's still missing that oomph to really elevate it from like a 6 or a 7 into that 8, 9, 10 range of really making some great art. And when we look at our intro, it's a neat intro, just the piano and the clean vocals, but it also is missing all foundation, right? So it is harsh and gritty, it is bright and poppy, but when they come together and we hear the verse, when we get everything together, or the second parts of the verse, where, like I said, we get just the gritty, then we get them combined, just the gritty. When we get them combined, we can hear this, but it's very clear, I think, in the chorus, is that even with the gritty guitar, we're just gonna call them gritars. Even with the gritars in the picture, it's still bright, it's still optimistic, it's also kind of sappy, and I say that in the nicest way. I think it's very difficult to write a love song like this without some sort of sappy cheesiness being associated with it. For all I know, it's kind of impossible. I don't know. If you're writing a romantic track for like a background, a film score, right? You have two people falling in love. You can make music that is seriously romantic. But I think when you put words to it like this and you turn um, a fairly traditional mainstream style song. And I'm just using mainstream as a way to separate it from film scoring or any other type of secondary component to a multimedia project where the music is designed to evoke an emotion and not tell the story itself. Once the music tells the story of the romanticness and you add in very direct lines like I love you, I think it's always going to, even like pop music, bubblegum pop music, which tends to gravitate towards the sound a lot more so than metal would, still comes off as campy when you have it very directed like this. Maybe nobody else feels that way. Maybe that's just a personal bias. So anyway, I just want to clarify that when I call it sappy, and I might use the word campy in this analysis, it is not coming from a place of negativity. I think it's just an intrinsic element of writing a love song like this. Very distanced from, like I had mentioned, like a romantic track designed to evoke the elements of the emotion of love, more so than a song that is about professing the love to somebody, which I think is always just going to have this sappy element to it. Um, but yeah, so like even with the guitar here, just really dirtying the place up, getting that low end, distorted sound. We got the growls in there. It's still a very bright and dancey and flowy kind of track. And I think it's phenomenal how they come together and neither side overpowers it. It has the punch of metal. It has the brightness of a piano track. I guess the melody's kind of poppy. We'll go with pop for it. Um, and when they come together, it's just punchy optimism, punchy brightness, punchy sappiness. And it works so well. So now that we've kind of touched on that, now I really want to loop it into the bridge. where we take it dark. Um, I didn't really catch many of the lyrics during the verses. I caught some of the lyrics during the chorus. We heard that, 3 times after all. And I caught the line during the bridge because it was repeated like 10 times. Something like, my soul belongs to you or something like that, which is a romantic statement, but can also be kind of a sinister statement. That if you tell that to the devil, that's a very different thing than if you tell it to another mortal who you just happen to really love. Um, so we have a sentence that is sort of ambiguous on its own. It doesn't have any direct connotation. So the music is really going to inform us how we should feel about that. And the music gets sinister. I'm still not entirely sure how to read into this. We have this electronic sound that comes in and provides these chords that are just very grim. And then we get the vocals on top of it, and we start to layer in more and more elements, a couple more synth lines, and then we bring in the guitars, and then it's got like this like groovy metal idea with these synths behind it. That's hard to say. Um, with multiple synth instruments behind it. There, I'll pluralize instrument. That way I can say that. Um, and it just gets darker and grittier, and then we swap vocalists and we get the growls in here instead. And this started to click with me a little better just because of the swap. It's still a very dark, eerie, aggressive section that feels, and I don't, it could have just been for contrast, right? We have this very bright, sappy verse and chorus, so we're going to bring in a punchy breakdown for our bridge. And maybe it was just done that way because that's what metal does, or because they wanted contrast. Um, but it just puts me in a really weird mindset where the bridge feels more like a ritual. The rest of it is a sappy love song, and then we turn into a ritual and we pledge our souls to each other, and then we just love each other again. And so, it's interesting in that regard where I'm not sure how to feel about the bridge. If that's the intention, is to have maybe a tongue-in-cheek ritualistic element, or maybe it was completely unintentional and there just was supposed to be this contrast to it, or it was a metal breakdown. There's lots of reasons why this could have come into play outside of a very intentional thematic one. But reading it from a thematic angle, it's an interesting choice. Um, though, I mean, on the other side of the deal, it could also just be, it said that this was for some, it was dedicated to somebody. Um, I'm going to assume the partner of our vocalist. Though this is a one-man project, I believe, which puts it perfectly in line with this week's theme, where we explored other one-person projects. Um, I'm going to assume that also it could just be that these two people, that this auditory aesthetic perfectly encapsulates them. Maybe they are darker people. Maybe they still dress, gothy and enjoy sort of that macabre, what is it, macabre relationship kind of stuff. Um, and having a mini ritualistic sound where you pledge your soul to each other is right up their alley as far as their characters are. I don't have any extra insight into that section, other than the fact that it's an interesting shift, not knowing what the context or purpose of it is. And I think that's what I'm going to leave at that. But I was happy by the end when we did get a couple of repetitions of the growl in there, so that it was the both characters being able to say, I pledge my soul to you, rather than one person pledging their soul to the other, which is a bit of a lopsided power dynamic in a relationship. Um, but aside from the thematic elements, if we just look at the bridge in isolation, it was really neat. I love the way it built up. I love the atmosphere of it. Um, just the entire balancing act of those darker synth pads with the like that djenty kind of guitar stuff coming in was really neat, especially hearing and contrasting it to what we had previously, which was the guitar versus the piano, which has a lot less in common sonically. This kind of brought the opposition, the pop side, whatever you want to call it, the electronic side, a little closer in line to the metal side, and created a little bit more of a resonance in the two instruments that dominated the track. Whereas the piano and guitar kind of sit in opposition of each other. They do come together beautifully. They have a really nice combination when their timbres come together, but they're also very sonically different. Whereas here, our two ideas are sonically similar. So I thought that was neat. And also just speaking about that, it could showcase how the two people, the narrator and their partner, their lover are three-dimensional people who are very different in some cases and very similar in others. Kind of going back to that idea that it could be about a similar fondness of darker themes and tones or whatever. Um, yeah, I'm gonna chalk it up to just it probably having a purpose for the author. I'm just not privy to it. That's where I'm gonna go with that. So let's. I think that wraps everything up. Let me hit the lyrics, and we'll wrap this video up. Yeah. So lyrically, it's kind of what I would expect, given what I picked up on the themes and the few lyrics I did here, primarily from the chorus. It's about two people who are so completely enamored with each other that all they want to do is include each other in their lives. A lot of lines are metaphorical ideas and reiterations of "I want you in my life, I want to be in your life." Um, and the chorus states that it's not something that wavers. Every day, every way, even now, I'll say and I'll scream, "I love you." And it is just, it's powerful, but it's also a little sappy. Again, coming from a place of positivity. It is kind of dressed up a little bit. I mentioned that there's metaphor in here. It's dressed up a little bit to meet the darker metal aesthetic in places, such as "I want you here in my dark." That is something that they say together in one of the verses. Um, at one point it says, "Sink inside of our oblivion," which I think in isolation feels a bit negative, but given everything else around it, I think it's a thematic way of being together, right? It's like saying, like in an emo song where they'd be like, "I love you so much that we should have a double suicide to make sure we're buried together," right? It's grim, it's macabre, it's negative in a lot of situations, but in that specific scenario, it's seen in a positive light. And I think that's how I want to read that one too. Um Now I had a completely wrong read on the bridge. Uh I had read the lyrics to be "I give my soul to you," and I completely misremembered that. It's "my soul calls out to you," which is a very different statement. um, and so through that angle, I kind of hear the darkness in the song to be, them separated, right? And the music is trying to keep them apart. It's a darkness. It's like a fog, or even just literal darkness where you can't see somebody else. And my soul calls out to you. It vies. It fights to be reunited, to get through the negativity, through the tough times, through the darkness, through anything, to find you again. I think that's what the bridge is going for now. Lyrics are important when you're talking about them. And that clears up a lot of my feelings about this track. Like I said, I was kind of mixed on the bridge, but now it makes perfect sense given everything else. And, we can go back to this idea of two people just being so in love with each other that they never want to separate. And so I think it's really cool because a relationship is two things. It is simultaneously two people and one combined people. That's a weird way to word that. But you have the one relationship, right? And that is both people. And so there are two individuals here with one group concept. And I love how this is represented in the music where we constantly see just the heavy stuff, like in the first parts of the verse, or just the bright stuff, just the light stuff, like in our intro, and also in our outro. And we hear them on their own. We get to hear how they're kind of neat on their own. The guitar riff and the growling is fine. It's a decent metal sound on its own. The piano with the vocals is a beautiful melody on its own. But how they not only are great on their own, but when they come together, we really get a perfect combination of sonic qualities where the piano and guitar and drums and both vocals play off of each other so nicely. The guitars create a foundation for the piano melody to sit over. They don't feel odd and they don't feel like they're lacking something because one is a foundation and one is a lead. And when you separate them, they're missing the complementary elements. When you bring them together, you get the full idea. And I love how that idea of two people coming together to form something greater is mimicked and replicated in the music. Two musical ideas come together to create the full song. Um, yeah, just like with Fighter. Um, it's not typically the kind of music I would gravitate towards, but just the strong thematic cohesion really makes me enjoy what's going on. And I love that attention to detail. It's the same thing I talked about on the Fighter, where musically it wasn't typically something I would listen to, but thematically, the way everything comes together and what it symbolizes and how it works off of the lyrical themes is something that just really clicks with me. Nadae is definitely turning into an artist that I need to keep on my radar. So, those are my thoughts on Nadae's The Lover. Let me know what you thought. If you enjoyed it, anything that stood out to you, anything you'd like to correct me on, add on to what I stated, any of that, put your thoughts down in the comments. In the description box, I'll have links for Nadae. You'll be able to find this song, their streaming platforms, social media, whatever. All their links will be in there. Remember to like, subscribe, and ring the bell on this video. And show some love to Nadae if you head over to any of their stuff. Likes, subscribes, bookmarks, shares, whatever. That wraps it up for today. We might have an album review tomorrow. It's all about my throat, how well that goes through a 3 to 4 hour review. It's gonna be hell on my throat. So we'll see how my sickness develops tomorrow. Sunday we'll have the live stream. That'll be out for everybody on Sunday evening EST. It'll be available for patrons to join in the morning, 11 a.m. EST. And then Monday, we will start next week's theme of album openers. So that'll be fun. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, with the music you listen to, and remember to have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening whenever you choose to watch my videos.